Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie. That's Heath. Joining us now, replacing Pete Prisco, is the great, the wonderful, the talented Adam Azer. Thanks for being with us here, Adam, as always, on FFT to break down the roster trends of the most added, most dropped, and most traded players of the moves that you made on Tuesday night. And this is obviously something that you can use as an indication of what could happen with your waiver moves on Wednesday. Let's show you the most added players from those moves Tuesday night. Foster Moreau, look at that. No Darren Waller, at least that's the expectation. So he could become a starting fantasy tight end for you this week as the Raiders take on the Washington football team. Taysom Hill, not Ian Book, can be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints against the Cowboys. You got Jamal Williams in a great spot if there is no DeAndre Swift. And those are the three main options that a lot of fantasy managers are looking at, as well as Tuba Hubbard, Alexander Madison, and Boston Scott. But those guys are rostered in a lot of leagues. You're seeing a big spike for Foster Moreau and Taysom Hill. So let's start right there. So Adam, Foster Moreau, we saw him step in for an injured Darren Waller earlier this season. It was against the Eagles, the dream matchup, but he played well. Can he replicate that type of performance against Washington this week?
6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. I'm going to take the under on that. I think there's a pretty decent chance of a touchdown, though. Derek Carr likes to throw to his tight ends and to Hunter Renfrow inside the 10-yard line. So, yeah, I think Foster Moreau is a decent start. I think he's a top 12 option. Washington has been kind of average against tight ends. They faced some pretty good ones. There have been 2 tight ends who have had exactly 5 targets against the Washington football team, and they were Dawson Knox and Robert Tonyan. Both had at least 49 yards and a touchdown. So if you get 5 or more targets, you could have a pretty good game against Washington. And I think Morel is set up for a nice game. I wouldn't start him over TJ Hawkinson, but I would start him over Dalton Schultz now that it looks like Amari Cooper is going to play.
Yeah, we had this conversation just before the break with one of the Name That Player clues, Kyle Pitts. I would say I would start Foster Moreau over Kyle Pitts as well. But Heath, I don't think you share that sentiment. But in terms of Foster Moreau on his own, how much do you trust him stepping in for Waller, who averaged basically a little over 8 targets per game when he's on the field?
I think that's the key. If you told me that Moreau was going to get 8 targets, then I would probably be starting him over Kyle Pitts, Dalton Schultz, all those guys. That last game where he got 6 targets, that puts him in a lot muddier range because, he had a great day in that game because he caught all 6 of them and scored a touchdown. So that's 18 fantasy points. Most weeks, that's going to be 4 for 40, and you hope he scores a touchdown.
All right, so we'll see if he takes advantage of this opportunity. Again, Darren Waller has yet to be ruled out. Rich Bisaccia said week to week, but they did not rule him out for this week, although the indication is dealing with that IT band injury in his knee, probably not going to play in week 13. We just hope to have him back for the fantasy playoffs at this point. Tuba Hubbard is going to get a big opportunity in front of him because of Christian McCaffrey being out for the season with that ankle injury. So, Adam, we don't have to worry about starting Hubbard for week 13 because the Panthers are on a bye. But rest of season, Tuba Hubbard, Amir Abdullah, can you trust either one looking at their schedule, but knowing the opportunity is there without McCaffrey on the field?
Oh, looking at their schedule is a big, big deal. It couldn't get much worse for Tuba Hubbard in the fantasy playoffs with the Bills, the Bucks, and the Saints. So, no, I don't want to trust him. You know what this actually reminds me of is Mike Davis last year. His first 3 games without Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis was incredible. He was one of the best running backs in fantasy. But then his last 9 games without Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis gave you 2 good fantasy games, 2 where you were really happy to have started him. And I think that's probably what you're looking at with Tuba Hubbard. You're going to have to pray for a touchdown. Now, the Atlanta game in week 14 is another story. I think he's probably a start that week, but his passing game role is going to be pretty low. And it could be something like Tony Jones, Ty Montgomery last week, where Abdullah actually outscores him in PPR leagues, and neither of them is really worth using. So I would not really be too aggressive picking up Tuba Hubbard. I understand. Like I picked up Tevin Coleman in a league last week because you can't pass up a starting running back, but you know that it's going to take a lot for these guys to have good games. That's pretty much how I feel about Hubbard after week 14, so in your fantasy playoffs.
In the 5 games that McCaffrey missed earlier this season with the hamstring injury, Hubbard did get 13 or more PPR points in 3 of them, but that was before Abdullah joined the roster, and so we'll see if it's a split situation, which makes things even tougher if, in fact, Hubbard's playing on rushing downs and Abdullah's playing on passing downs. Heath, Jamal Williams was one of the most added players, and we've seen the opportunity is in front of him if there is no DeAndre Swift, and as Dan Campbell said at the start of the week, we might not see Swift in this matchup against the Vikings. How much do you like Jamal Williams if he's the starter there for against Minnesota?
He came out at number 8 in my first run of the projections. I dropped him down to 12 or 13 just because that seemed too strong. But you look at what this offense has done. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. Anthony Lynn's offense historically has having a ton of running back opportunities. This year's been the same, at least 30 opportunities for the running backs just about every week. Williams won't get all of those, but I would expect at least 20 touches against a questionable matchup at this point. But he's probably going to catch 5 passes. He's a start, and I would start him over both Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara.
Yep, Saquon Barkley as well. We saw that with the consensus rate. At least that's where I come out.
Right.
I think
Yes.
you do as well. Adam, in terms of Jamal Williams, what happens if DeAndre Swift plays? How would you approach the Lions' backfield taking on a Minnesota defense that's expected to get a little bit healthier? They designated Michael Pierce to return off IR with the elbow injury. They might get Dalvin Tomlinson back off the COVID-19 list. We don't expect Anthony Barr at this point, but getting those two tackles could make a difference.
Yeah, it could make a difference. I would not start Jamal Williams if DeAndre Swift plays, and I would start Swift for sure. You know, I think every week the DeAndre Swift manager, at this point, you're probably just putting in your lineup, but you know that it's kind of a wild ride. But he comes through almost every single week, so you can't sit DeAndre Swift with that role in the passing game. Jared Goff is last in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks in intended air yards per pass attempt. He just dumps it off. So whoever the starting running back is in this game is probably going to catch at least 5 passes. And I'm sorry, I don't know if this is going to come up, Jamie, but I just want to say I did not see Sony Michel on the most added list. He is 48% rostered, and I would add him. I saw Austin Walter on there. I'm sure Michel's going to be more added than him, but I would add Michel over Tuba Hubbard because I think it's very questionable whether or not Henderson plays this week, and this is the type of handcuff you want on your team for the stretch run since Henderson gets beat up every week.
Yeah, totally agree. We said that he was one of the guys we used for Name That Player. As you can imagine, Adam, Heath dominated that game once again. So his most added ranking, if you will, he comes as a number 25 player on the list. And so when you take out the kickers and the defenses, obviously he's a little bit higher on that list. But yes, he should be well over 65% in my opinion, and close to 90 because, like you said, not just the opportunity to maybe start this week in case Darrell Henderson is out, but there's also the long-term lottery ticket appeal that if Henderson does go down, this is still one of the better offenses in football despite their 3-game losing streak. And as Pete Prisco said earlier in the show, they have to start running the ball a little bit better to fix some of their woes on offense.